Hey, welcome back. In the last lesson, we set up some Exchange 2016 servers in an existing Exchange 2013 organization. So my goal in this lesson is to begin phasing out Exchange 2013. And the first step in doing that is to migrate mailboxes off of Exchange 2013 and onto Exchange 2016. So that's what this video is all about. Now, before I jump right into the demos, I need to point out that there are a lot of different options for moving mailboxes over to your Exchange 2016 mailbox server. There are enough options that we're not going to get to all of them in this video, but I am going to show you some of the more common options and show you how those options work. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So the first option that I want to show you is how to move mailboxes by using the GUI, that is the Exchange Administrative Center. And the way that we're going to do that is to open up the Exchange Admin Center, go to Recipients, and then we'll go to Mailboxes and select a mailbox, and then we'll use the Move Mailbox option and move the mailbox. Simple enough. So let me show you how this works. So here we are in the Exchange Admin Center, and I'm going to go up to Recipients, and Mailboxes is selected by default, and we'll go ahead and move User 1. So I'm going to select User 1, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here on the side, and you'll notice that we have some details for User 1. We have User Mailbox, we have the user's email address, their title, office, work phone, and then we have a few different sections of options. We have phone and voice features, in-place archive, in-place hold. But watch what happens when we scroll down. If I scroll all the way to the bottom, we have Move Mailbox, and there's a link to another database. So I'm going to go ahead and click that link. So now we're taken to the new local mailbox move screen, and the first thing that we have to do is enter a name for a migration batch. So a batch is essentially a collection of mailboxes that are being migrated collectively. I'm only migrating one mailbox, but it doesn't matter. We still need to create a batch. So I'm just going to call this first batch. Now the next thing that we have is the archive section, and we can choose to move the primary mailbox and the archive mailbox if one exists, which I don't have any archive mailboxes on this server, but if I did, that would be an option. We can choose to move the primary mailbox only without moving the archive mailbox. And we have an option to move the archive mailbox only without moving the primary mailbox. So we do have a bit of flexibility. We can move a primary mailbox without the archive mailbox or the archive mailbox without the primary mailbox. I'm just going to stick with the default option because I want to move everything. Now the next thing that we have to do is select a target database. And to do that, I'm going to click Browse, and that's going to open up another window. And we need to select the database that we're going to move it to. So right now, this mailbox resides on Exchange 2013, but here's a database on my Exchange 2016 server. Now, if we didn't know which database was which, we could go by the version numbers. Version 15.1 indicates that this is Exchange 2016. So I'm going to select this database and click Add. And you'll notice the database shows up down here, and I'll click OK. And if we had an archive database, we could specify it right here. We don't really have one, so I'm not going to worry about that. And then there's a bad item limit. In other words, do we want the process to abort after it encounters so many bad items? I'm not going to worry about that because we're working in a lab environment. I'm just going to click on Next. And so now we see a screen telling us that a new migration batch will be created after you click New. And we have an option of specifying who the report is going to get sent to. I'm just going to have it sent to the administrator. Then we have a couple of other interesting options here. We have please select the preferred option to start the batch. We can start it automatically, that's the default, or we can start it manually. There's also options for completing the batch. We can complete automatically or complete manually. Now the reason for this is that the migration process is going to be disruptive to the user whose mailbox is being migrated. So maybe if we had a big load on the server, we wouldn't want to start the migration process automatically right this minute. Maybe we'd want to specify that it should be started manually at a later time when the server isn't under so much load. Also, we can start migrating a user's mailbox and then not complete it because you can begin copying messages without disrupting the user. It's the completion process that disconnects the user from the mailbox and forces them to reestablish. So in some instances, it may be good to manually complete the batch rather than completing it automatically. Now, since I'm just demonstrating a migration in a lab environment, I'm going to go with the defaults and automatically start the batch and automatically complete the batch. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and click New. And we receive a prompt asking us if we want to go to the migration dashboard to see the status of the migration batch. Yes, I would love to. So we can see that the first batch is syncing. We have one mailbox, nothing synced, nothing finalized, nothing failed. And this can take a little while to complete, so I'm just going to pause the video and let it do its thing. We may have to refresh a couple of times, and we'll pick it up here in a second. Okay, so it looks like the batch is completed. We can see that it's finalized. And if we look over here under status, we can see the status is set to completed. So everything looks good here. But how can we really confirm that the move was successful? Well, let me switch back over to my Exchange server. So this time I'm going to go ahead and move user 2 and user 3. So I'm going to select user 2, and I'm going to hold down on Shift and select user 3. And now I'm going to scroll down over here, and you'll notice that we don't have an option to move the mailboxes, but we do have something that says more options. If I click on that, then more options are revealed, and I can scroll down, and here's the move mailbox option. So I'm going to click to another database, and this works exactly as before. I'm going to call this one batch 2, and I'm going to go with the defaults. I'm going to move the primary mailbox and the archive mailbox if one exists. I don't have an archive mailbox, but it doesn't hurt to leave this option selected. And I'm going to click Browse, and I'm going to select DB1 as my target database because that's on my Exchange 2016 server. So I'll select that and click Add and OK. I'm not going to worry about an archive database because I don't have one, and I'm not going to worry about a bad item limit because I'm working in a lab environment. I'm just going to click Next, and once again we're asked where the report should go. I'm going to send that report to the administrator, and I'm going to automatically start the batch and automatically complete the migration batch. So I'll click New, and once again I'm asked if I want to go to the migration dashboard. I'm going to choose Yes. And we can see that batch 2 is syncing, whereas batch 1 was completed. So I'm going to pause the video while this batch completes. So it looks like the process is completed. We moved one mailbox as a part of the first batch, and we moved 2 more mailboxes as a part of the second batch. And we can confirm the success of the move by going over to an Exchange server and opening up the Exchange management shell and typing get-mailbox. And when I do that, we see all of our mailboxes and their locations, and we can see that user 1, user 2, and user 3 are now on the Exchange 2016 server. So the move was a success. So I've shown you a couple of different ways of moving mailboxes using the GUI, but what if you want to move mailboxes using the Exchange management shell? Well, there are ways of doing that as well. As a matter of fact, most real-world mailbox moves involve using the Exchange management shell, and there are various reasons for that. Probably the biggest reason is because in large organizations where maybe there are thousands of mailboxes, it's not really practical to go through a GUI and pick and choose which mailboxes you want to move. It's a lot easier to use the shell. The shell also has the advantage of allowing you to script mailbox moves. Now, hopefully you're already starting to get the sense that there are a lot of different ways of moving mailboxes. For the sake of demonstration, I'm going to be using a technique called move request. Now, move requests have been around for a while. And the reason why I'm using move request is because they work with the legacy environments too. After all, this particular lesson is all about migrating away from an older version of Exchange to a newer version of Exchange, and move requests work with Exchange 2013 and Exchange 2010. The alternative is to use something called migration batches. Now, I'm not really going to be covering migration batches in this video, although you will see some references to batches, but I'm going to talk about migration batches some more in lesson 13. Now, move request is what I'm going to be using, and just like what you saw a minute ago, you can use a move request to move a single mailbox, or you can use it to move a collection of mailboxes, or even an entire database. So let's take a look at how move requests work. Now, move requests are usually pretty easy to work with. You can use them to move a single mailbox or a group of mailbox, say an entire database worth. Now, the information that you have to provide varies a little bit depending on whether you're moving one mailbox or multiple mailboxes. So I've got a couple of examples on this slide. Let's suppose that you want to move a single mailbox. Well, in that type of situation, all you really need to know is the email address that's associated with the mailbox and the destination for the move. So here's how it works. We have new-move request. That's the commandlet that creates the move request. Then we have the identity switch, followed by the user's email address in SMTP format. Then we have the target database switch, and we specify the target database name. This is the destination where the mailbox will go to as a part of the move. And then you'll notice right here I've got a parameter called whatIf. Now, whatIf is something that's part of PowerShell. It's not part of Exchange, it's native PowerShell. And what this does is it allows you to simulate an operation without committing to it for real. So by specifying the what if parameter, I'm able to see the outcome of a move without actually performing the move. So that way, if there's some kind of problem, then I can find out about that without actually moving a mailbox. Now, if you're only talking about moving a single mailbox, it's probably not a big deal if you run into an issue because it's usually easy enough to correct. But what if you commit to moving thousands of mailboxes and you make a typo? Maybe you direct those mailboxes at the wrong database. Well, what if can really help you out in those situations because it lets you see what would have happened before you actually take action. Now, what about moving an entire database worth of mailboxes? Well, that's handled a little bit differently. You can see the syntax right here. We're still using move request, but we have to do it a little bit differently. You can see first I'm doing get-mailbox database. This retrieves a list of the mailbox databases in my environment. Then I say get-mailbox, and I use the database switch followed by a database name. So this portion of the command retrieves a list of all of the mailboxes that exist within the database that I specify. Then I have the pipe symbol followed by new-move request. So this is the part of the command that actually forms the move request. Then I specify the target database, and then I list the target database name, and then once again I'm using what if. So essentially what this command does is it connects to a database, it retrieves all of the mailboxes from that database, and it moves them to a target database. So let's take a look at how a couple of these commands might work. Let's pretend that we wanted to move the mailbox for user 4. So what I could do is type new-move request and then -identity, and then I have to specify the user's email address. So that's going to be, in this case, user4@posydemo.com. Then I specify the target database, and I have to provide the target database name, and I'm going to use db1, and I'm going to provide what if. So I'm not actually moving the mailbox. I'm just going to see what would happen if I did. And I'll press enter. And we can see that what if comes back and it says creating move request posydemo.com/users/user4. So what if is telling us that if we ran this command, it would create a move request to move user 4's mailbox. So what if I wanted to move all of the mailboxes from an entire database? Well, let me go ahead and clear the screen just to reduce the clutter. And the first thing that we need to do is get the database name. So I'll say get-mailbox database. So here's a list of our mailbox databases. So what I do then is type get-mailbox, and I'm using get-mailbox because I'm retrieving the actual mailboxes rather than retrieving the mailbox databases. But I do have to provide the database switch because I have to tell Exchange what databases those mailboxes reside in. So the database is called mailbox database, and then a big long number. So I'm going to pause the video for 1 second while I type this number. So I've typed the database name, and now I add a quotation mark, and then a pipe symbol, and new-move request, and I'll use the target database switch, and we have to give it the name of the target database. Now, if we didn't know the name of the target database, we could look up here and see what it is. In this case, it's just db1, and once again, I'm going to use what if. So after a brief delay, you can see that there were a number of move requests that would have been created had we run this command for real. Now, the type of move that I just showed you works great if you want to move mailboxes here and now, but that's not always practical, because when you move a mailbox from one database to another, the user will momentarily lose connectivity to that mailbox, and that can be disruptive. Never mind the fact that there's not really a way of keeping tabs on the move using the method that I just showed you, but we can use a variation of the command. So take a look at what we've got here. This is basically the same command that you saw a moment ago, but we've added a couple of things. We've taken away what if, and we've added batch name. Batch name allows us to associate a name of a batch with the move request. Kind of like what you saw when we were working with the GUI. We assigned a name to the move so that way we could keep track of the move statistics. And if you look down here, you can see that there's even a get-move request batch name, and we can identify the move by its name and then get the statistics for the move. Now, the other thing that we've got going on here is the suspend when ready to complete option. So let me explain this. When you begin moving mailboxes, one of the things that has to happen is all of the messages and other mailbox elements get copied over to the new database. Now, the copy process isn't usually disruptive. What is disruptive is the switchover process that occurs at the end of the copy. So what the suspend when ready to complete switch does is it allows the mailbox contents to be copied, but then just prior to the switchover, the migration process gets suspended so that way it's non-disruptive. You've already done the bulk of the move, so all you have to do then is at a more convenient time, go ahead and resume the operation, and that allows the move to complete in a very short amount of time. So rather than me just sit here and try to explain all of this, why don't we switch over to an Exchange environment and I'll show you how this works. So the command that we're going to use is very, very similar to what we've already used, and we've used whatif to verify that move request would have indeed been created. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press the up arrow to repeat the command, and I'm going to get rid of the whatif on the end. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to replace that whatif with a batch name. So I'm going to say dash batch name, and I'll call this batch 3. And I'm also going to add the dash suspend when ready to complete. Now we don't have to use the suspend when ready to complete, but I'm going ahead and using it this time just because I want to show you how it works. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and press enter and start the process. And this takes a little while, so I'm going to pause the video and we'll pick it up here a little bit later on. Okay, so after a brief delay, the move requests have been created, and you can see them right here. You can see mailbox names. You can see that the status detail is set to queued. We can see the total mailbox size. But what if we wanted some more information? I mean, the view that we've got right here is static. What if we wanted to know what's going on right here, right now, not what went on 5 minutes ago? Well, we can do that by using the get move request commandlet. So I'm going to type get dash move request, and I'll say dash batch name, and this is where that batch name comes in handy. I called it batch 3, and then I'm going to use the pipe symbol and say get dash move request statistics and press enter. And we can see that the status detail is set to auto suspend. We can see the percent complete. So basically what has happened here is that once these mailboxes reached a state in the move where the move was 95% complete, then the move was automatically suspended so that we wouldn't do anything that's disruptive to the end user. So that's what happens when we use the suspend when ready to complete switch with a move request. Now, just a second ago, you saw me use the get-move request commandlet along with get-move request statistics to find out what was going on with my move request. But there are a few other commandlets that you need to be aware of. So if you look up here at the top, we have get-move request and then batch name, and you would enter the batch name, pipe symbol, and then set-move request -suspend when ready to complete, $false. So what we're doing right here is we're turning off the suspend when ready to complete flag. Then the next thing that you would do is say get-move request. We would specify the batch name just as we did before, and then provide the pipe symbol, and then say resume move request. And this is going to allow that move process to complete. And then just as we did before, we can use the get-move request statistics to find out what is going on with the process, so we can find out when the move completes. So this looks like a lot, but it's actually pretty easy to do. So let me switch back over to Exchange, and we'll use these commands to finish our move. So here we are back in Exchange, and the first thing that we need to do is set the suspend when ready to complete flag to false. So I'm just going to press the up arrow to repeat my previous command, and I'm going to say set-move request, and then -suspend when ready to complete, and I'll say $false, then press enter. And that process has completed. So the next thing that we need to do is resume the move request. So what I'll do is I'll press the up arrow again, and we use the pipe symbol and then say resume-move request and press enter. And that's going to cause the move to resume. And now if we want to find out what's going on, we can just use the same command that I used earlier with the get move request statistics. And we can see that right now the initial seeding is going on. And this process can take a little while, so I'm going to pause the video, and while the video is paused, I'm going to periodically check in to see how things are going, and then once it finishes, I'll show you what the completed move looks like. Okay, so I've performed the command one more time, and it looks like this time the status detail is showing completed. So we've got 100% complete for each mailbox, so it looks like the move has completed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to say get-mailbox and press enter, and this is going to show me all of our mailboxes. And we can see that all of our mailboxes have been migrated over to the Exchange 2016 server. So those are just some ways that you can perform mailbox moves from Exchange Server 2013 to Exchange Server 2016.